And turn me on. Thank you. Sounds better. It's your mind, it's not mine. Climate change is a threat not only to forests and not only to people, but to forests and birds, to flora and fauna. Bill Gates gave us a good model for climate change: filling a bath when you can only turn off the incoming water very slowly, and everyone else must do some turning too. Disaster happens when the bath overflows. You could adapt to the situation by building up the sides of the bath, but the incoming water will catch up and overflow will be worse. Instead of trying to slow the inflow, you've wasted precious time and accrued debt building up the sides when you knew that hours later the water would catch you up. If instead you had used mitigation techniques, reducing the flow to the extent that you could, the overflow would be smaller. If the bath was in a rented room for the night and you managed to contain the overflow until you leave, the full to overflowing bath becomes the next occupant's problem. Putting money into adaptation and not addressing mitigation is an admission of failure, is self-centred, and does not address the fact that climate change will just get harder and the losses greater. After you've built the walls and increased the stormwater capacity, will you then have the lead time to address the real problem, reducing the amount of carbon that's emitted or increasing sequestration? Are you leaving it to other councils and countries to solve the problem of reduction of carbon, remembering that we have the 6th highest emission per capita and are a rich nation? Will you then have the borrowing ability, having spent millions on adaptation? Have you spent your money on a privileged few, lifestyled, well off, insured, housed, older people? What about our fellow travellers on this earth, our flora and fauna? A biodiversity crisis is just round the corner and could have just as significant an effect on people as climate change will. They somewhat go hand in hand. Have you loaded the now larger problem and the costs onto a future generation? This is not an issue to be provincial or generational over. Climate change requires a large and generous stance. We cannot wall ourselves in and pump out the excess. This is a time to coordinate and use our advantages to lessen the threat to the world, to biodiversity, and to us. Do you think climate change will be slow enough that world and government mitigation requirements won't blow this 10-year plan out of the water? Because I do. If this was a theoretical exercise and I had the authority, I would ask you to start over. Happily for you, I don't have that authority. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Let me ask the first question, and I hope it turns you on. If you extend your logic that adaptation is defeat and therefore we should be looking at mitigation, are you saying that we should abandon 1,800 properties on the coast and 6,000 who are flood-prone inland?
I'm saying that if you look at the level of threat that we are facing, I would be spending half the amount of money on mitigation and adaptation at this time. You can adapt, but this is going to get much worse. And so if you don't spend on mitigation, you'll be forced into adaptation further down the track and do no mitigation because everybody will be screaming at you, do my section, and you won't be able to do mitigation. If you don't mitigate, the problem just gets worse.
A comment, if you like, before I open it up to the others. So what my understanding is that the mitigation investment that you do, it is global. The adaptation that you do is local.
Yeah.
Welcome to local government. Councillor Hanford.
Thank you, Russell. I've got two questions. The first one is just around what you see as being the biggest opportunity for us in Kāpiti and also for us as a council, what role we can play in what is potentially the biggest opportunity for mitigation. I'd like you to comment on what you think that is and what role we can play.
I don't know what it is. I made some suggestions in my submission, but I would have thought that if you were taking a long-term plan, then climate change features big in that. And so I imagine that the council should have had, here's the opportunities, here are the costs, this is where you get the biggest bang for the buck. So you might be able to tell me what the biggest one is. But I've written the ones that I can think of off the top of my head, but I haven't looked at it the way you should be looking at it. So I can't answer the question.
Yeah, no, that's okay. My second question is just around the Te Ao Māori worldview of forest and bird. I'm wondering whether there's that kind of lens that you'd like to comment on or have any views on the integration of the need to be kaitiaki of the land and how that fits in with forest and birds vision.
I'm not even sure I can answer that question. I think that if we don't look after the land doesn't look after us. We're destroying the land. We're destroying everything in it. And we're doing it to protect ourselves. Well, in this country, we're doing it to actually give ourselves comfort so that we can have our lattes and things. And me included. I'm not aiming at this at you without aiming it at me too. We're destroying the land. And if we do that, it will destroy us. Not that I think we might be worth... It'll go on without us.
Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you. My question relates, to your theoretical concept in explaining the Paikakariki seawall. Now, do you think we should be spending $21 million on the Paikakariki seawall, or just let nature take its course?
I noticed that Greater Wellington is withdrawing by 40 metres in the Queen Elizabeth Park. So that means that the seawall is going to have to wrap around, which is going to be an interesting exercise in the future. What I said before, I think, holds. If you were spending the same amount in mitigation as you were in adaptation, I think that would be the right thing to do for the current threat level. In future, I think that relationship's going to shift. The proportion of those is going to shift. But those people in Paikakariki are probably insured. And they might have to move away anyway. So, let nature take its course. You won't stop it anyway, I don't think. At least build it in wood, don't build it in concrete, because 1 tonne of cement equals 1 tonne of carbon dioxide.
Thank you.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Russell, for coming along and talking today. So one of the questions that we've been asking people to provide comment on is growth and I suppose how this area is going to accommodate that. I'm just wondering how that, what your views or the Forest and Birds views are on how we manage that in a sustainable way.
Carefully. Look where they... Okay, so this is what I think on that, because I have thought about this for a very long time. When we establish things like transport corridors and power corridors and telephone linkages and all that, what we should do at the same time is establish ecological corridors so that all the bits of ecology are all joined together. And we can do that at the planning stage, and it would be very easy to do then. And then, wherever you develop, doesn't really matter because the rest of nature is, if we break nature, back to your question, we're going to break the world. So by joining it up, but it can be done at the planning stage, it can't be retrofitted.
Thank you.
Russell, there are no more other questions, so thank you for your submission and thank you for coming and speaking to us.
Thank you. Thank you all for listening.
I've got a housekeeping matter to deal with. Has it got to be exactly 3:30?
As long as you do it by then.
Yeah. This is a resolution to allow the meeting to continue. So I'm moving that the meeting continue in accordance with Standing Order 4.2, under which members must resolve to allow a meeting to continue beyond 6 hours. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Holbrow. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Have we got Rachel here? Well, I've got oh, sorry. Sarah McMurray. Welcome.
Sure, thank you. Yeah. Kia ora everyone. I'm Sarah, a local ratepayer, and I'm an IT person, and so I let my phone run down and it had all my notes on it. I have a very... no laughing. I am here to ask you to focus on the core. What I see in this document is a great cause for thanks. Thank you all. There's a huge amount of effort gone into this. I can tell that by both councillors and a lot of staff. I went and looked up on localcouncils.govt.nz what are the statutory responsibilities of a council, because I thought, here am I, because I got quite grumpy as I was answering your questions, because I did feel rather as if the questions were along the lines of, have you stopped beating your wife yet? So this is not a question I want to be answering. You've kind of missed the point of a budgeting process and of a long-term planning process, which I think you were hearing there. It's much easier to design well and then build to the design than it is to design poorly and then try to retrofit everything and wonder why it doesn't go. And what we've seen in here is nothing about the traditional pillars of what a council does. Nothing about the provision, well, not nothing, it's not fair. The provision of local infrastructure, and you've gone including water, sewerage, stormwater, roads. There's not a lot of pages on water, sewerage, stormwater, roads, and yet these are your statutory responsibilities. I get that you want to focus on change, but this happens in IT. People get all attracted by the shiny and forget about the core, the stuff that's working well or that's working actually pretty averagely but could become great, and don't bother to focus on that core. And that's what I saw happening in here. The definition in the localcouncils.govt, I don't know how authoritative it is and how definitive it is, but it said, number one, you guys have got to sort out sustainable district well-being. Cripes, that's a big ask. That's mad. And then it goes on to say, territorial responsibilities, councils' responsibilities include sustainable district wellbeing, the provision of local infrastructure including water, sewage, stormwater, roads, environmental safety and health, district emergency management, civil defence preparedness, building control, public health inspections and other environmental health matters, controlling the effects of land use, so land use management. There's a bunch of stuff in there. Now, the impression I get from this is that you've gone, whoa, COVID, whoa, sustainable district wellbeing, we have to do something flash and different and radical. Guru, you came in here saying, stop this overspending. Lots of you came in here saying, stop this overspending, stop this lurching around from flash hairy idea to flash hairy idea. You said, let's go to the core. Thank you for that. It was a great idea, and you have made some successful efforts in that, but I would ask all you councillors to please direct our CEO to seriously focus on the core. Every year, give us a report that says, here's how we have discharged. So this is that territorial authorities list. These are the hows. The last three are the hows. The why is sustainable district wellbeing. Everybody here's gone, oh, we've got to do sustainable district wellbeing, I think. Don't worry, it will come by doing the boring old stuff and getting really, really good at it. Use the All Blacks principle, which is do all the basics really well all the time. Don't worry about the flash stuff. Get on and give us, please, great water, great sewage, great stormwater, great roads, by having integrated planning that puts the well-being of our soil and our air and our birds and our our little geckos and skinks into those plans. Instead of retrofitting it and wondering why and going off down the road saying, oh, hey, how about we build some houses? Where are the plans that say, here's some pre-approved building plans that anyone can get approved in this district, especially if they go in these preordained zones? Where's the innovation in town planning going on? I'm not seeing any. And you guys, you can do this. And this is great brains trust you got here, and it's just old and stale and lost. And that was what was upsetting, reading the questions like, would you like us to spend more on the seawall? You've got your answer there. We were told years ago we needed to do a managed retreat from the coast. We all knew it. Some of us fought back and said, don't put it on our limb, thank you. Some of you were here for that. Guess what? The sea wasn't listening. Don't pander, just stick to the basics and get back and apply some innovation at those basics. Control land use, design the town in a way that it will get smaller, not bigger, that our precious soils are protected, that our precious wildlife is protected, our streams get healthier. And yeah, sorry, but you lost us all, I think, on the council housing. Great idea. Why haven't you done better town planning so that council housing is not needed? It's built by private enterprise. And that's it, really. Without my notes, I'm somewhat lost, but that was the gist. Please focus on the core. Please get creative and innovative on the core functions. Don't get distracted and terrified by this phrase of sustainable district wellbeing. You will help build our sustainable district wellbeing by pushing our council CEO to push his team to keep within bounds on spending, and to, if any time you want extra spending, you have some really jolly good statistics and befores and afters as to why that money's worth it, instead of hand wave statements. So thank you. Rave over.
Thank you very much. Just a question. Are you aware that the government is, by fiat of legislation, intending to take away from us our water, responsibilities of water, wastewater and stormwater? There goes some of your core responsibilities you're talking about.
I'm aware that
we are grappling with that.
Yeah, I get that. And that's a scary thing because you're going to lose some power and some authority and some mana. But that doesn't mean thrash around and try and find something else to spend the money on. That means all those years when you could have been getting really, really good at water, instead of just muddling along being pretty good, don't do that with everything else. So yes, I do that. And seriously, as a ratepayer, I'm still going to pay, you're going to pay, you're all ratepayers, you're going to pay for the water while we are there. And the more the council can do to make a good transition and good handover, that I would be applauding.
Councillor Good.
Kia ora, Rachel. Thank you for coming in and speaking to your submission, and good to hear that you've done some background and trying to inform yourself. Are you aware when you are doing your searching and having a look that the government reinstated what they referred to as the 4 well-beings? And I'm just reading from the local government website where it says that, and just summarising, that all these services, local government has a broader role in fostering livable communities than simply providing core services. Did you come across the 4 well-beings and the...
I have, and I guess my message is the well-being is the why, and the pillars of how are what to budget for. The why is what to make your decisions based on. Yes, we want well-being, and if it comes to a choice between a concrete seawall and a wooden seawall, which is an extraordinary thing to see on a long-term plan, and yes, I know it will last 25 years, but it's kind of expenditure. But if it comes to making that choice, then go which one will be better for well-being. But then give us an answer. Say, look, here's our columns. We thought this would affect well-being in this way, this would affect well-being in this way. I don't see decision matrices in here that indicate that anybody's actually thought about those things. I get that it's a scary responsibility and almost impossible to discharge. But you can avoid that the fear of failure by either working extremely diligently to have lots of statistics and lots of decision matrices, which I know you've done behind the scenes, but they're not apparent to us in the public, easily available public material. Or you can say, look, we are going to focus on why are we focusing on doing the basics right? The same reason the All Blacks do an awful lot of passing practice, because by doing the basics right, that is how you become great at delivering whatever it is, your big goal.
Councillor McCann.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Rachel. I was really looking forward to...
That's right.
Sorry, Sarah.
Kia ora, no worries.
So really looking forward to this submission based on the written one. I want to I was going to talk about the 4 well-beings, but I want to come back to something that you keep saying about the All Blacks and the basics. Do you not think that making sure that we've got adequate housing in our region is a basic right and something that we need to take some responsibility for?
Absolutely, and stop making it so bloody hard for people to build houses. It's,
one of the things
if you're a block to a process, if you're standing here like this and saying, I'm going to make this jolly difficult for you guys, oh, you're rubbish at that, you're not getting anything done, I better go and build some myself. It just doesn't compute.
So I'm sure with the research you've done, you've seen that there's quite a lot of work there to try and change some of those processes. Are you supportive of the idea that actually is part of the work program to try and make it easier for the development of, for instance, social housing, low-cost housing?
I think it's a terrific idea. I would also add in that immortal phrase, there is no try, there is only do or not do. So please, just do.
So thank you for that, that clarification.
Cheers.
Councillor Hanford.
Kia ora, through the Mayor. I've just got a question based on something that you had in your written submission around, a quote, let the community members get on with saving the world. And I can hopefully vouch for many of us around this table that we're really keen to have people in our community championing issues that are important to them, and to support the well-being of our entire community, but also the country.
Yeah.
So in what ways do you think that we could do that better as a council and actually encourage people to be a part of saving the world in their own lives?
By getting out of the way. Sorry, but first, I put my hand up here and said there are blockages, and that's heartfelt, and that's from business people a lot. Nurses, doctors, neighbours, people down the market. Council is a byword for being a blockage to whatever is wanted and desired. And it may be grossly unfair, but that is the perception. And I don't see enough of council in my day-to-day to be able to really judge So this is definitely second-hand, but it is definitely the perception. And you're far more fit to be able to answer this. You've done the mahi, you've put in the hard yards, encouraging, support, energising, pulling us all up by our bootstraps, kicking us up the backside. So thank you for that. You know what you would have liked from council. Far better than I do, sorry.
Councillor Randall.
Impossible question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my question relates to what you've been saying, relates to Kāpiti Airport. Now, could we remove the zoning requirement on airport and then let nature take its course? Like maybe they could put 3,000 dwellings, or do you think council has a role for creating certain zoning requirements on properties?
Sorry, thank you. Great question. I feel that if you take any one zoning decision in isolation, that you're setting us all up for a beating. The zoning, our town planning, our zoning people should be our absolute taonga in council. That's the core of it. If we could get a ground plan, a ground and waters plan, above and below ground as well, that we could all picture and see and go, wow, yeah, I'd like us to be moving towards that, and that shows where we have housing, where we have work within walking distance of that housing, where we have, why have we not got medium density housing across the road? I don't know. I'm not a town planner, but I'm paying for some town planners. I'd really like them to be let free to do a fabulous job and engage us all. And yeah, town planning's the answer. And it's where's it mentioned?
Right. Councillor Holbrook.
Thank you for coming in today, Sarah. I just wonder, what do you mean by core? Because one of the things that happened when the 4 wellbeings were stripped away is councils across the country decided that our core included cultural well-being, and our core included libraries, and our core included all those things that make life good. So what do you mean by core?
That is, again, a great question. I went back to these guys, the provision of local infrastructure. I personally thought libraries would be in there. It wasn't. That was my surprise. We've only been doing them 120 years, so it's obviously a bit of a new thing. That is something I would love to have engagement with. And again, there are experts here, people who understand how to engage in community. I don't. I just go around and rave at people from time to time and come up with some quite innovative ideas, or not. I think core is clean air to breathe, clean, healthy waters. I want my groundwater to stay where it is, thank you very much. I do not want salination. I do not want subsidence and all those other problems that have happened everywhere else where there's major draw-off in the world of groundwaters. Why do we allow it? Is it going to be different here? Do we have different physics? What's that about? So air, water, yes, a safe house. It's really nice that nobody's shooting at us and it's not raining inside tonight, and there's food every day. Those are my personal core, but core for the community, that's a good question. And if we could get it small and say this is the core, anything above that is unnecessary. I think you've got a perfectly good definition here, actually. Thinking on the fly, which is a bit slow. Water, sewerage, stormwater, roads, environmental safety and health, whatever that exactly means. District emergency management plans, civil defence, building control, town planning, public health inspections, other environmental health. Yeah, just take it off the list of local government. Don't add to it without really serious questions. And I know you're asking us now, but it seems like these are assumptive closed questions. Would you like sprinkles with your houses or chocolate? I don't want the houses. Or I do want the houses. I think council housing would be great, but you're seeking a mandate without having got
Right.
And
Any
so
asked us
begins
before.
the Cultural Revolution.
I know. Sorry, buddy.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for your submission and fronting
cheers.
up to speak to it. Thank you.
Kia ora, everyone. Take care.
But the next submitter is Deirdre Kent. Everybody knows Deirdre Kent, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to appear. In support of my quickly run-off submission with a lot of issues in it. Unlike the others, I'm going to take 6 quick issues. Access to housing. We had a mayor's task force, but and I'm glad that it's an issue today, and it's related to the rating system. I haven't really heard much about the mayor's task force. It didn't, even though I'm a news junkie and I'm obviously missed a lot. Secondly, managing growth. As the district grows, what do you think good growth looks like? And my answer is not on elite soils, not with deforestation, upward, not outward, and that is related to the rating system, and not requiring the loss of wetlands. What else can council do to help community resilience? We had a lot of staff members once on the subject, and I don't know whether we have that many now. I may be wrong, but I get that impression. Do you agree with the council's recommendation to set up a CCO? Well, I'm wary of it because I've seen what's happened at Auckland Port, and I would have to be convinced. I'm not convinced, and I'd like to be, to know what your arguments are in favour of it and whether you really think you've got control over a council-controlled organisation. Don't know. Waste minimisation. I was on the Mayor's task force for some months with Natalia and Jackie, and we worked hard, and we presented our report just before Christmas so that we got no publicity. And one of the things that we wanted was a council-collected organic waste, because council has said it has declared a climate emergency, and Sophie was on it, of course, a climate emergency, and yet we're still most of our residents are throwing their organic waste in the rubbish bins. Now, I realise this involves cost, and I realise that there is pressure on council for finances. And so my suggestion to you is that the council uses its position on the Local Government Association to join with other councils and make sure that government actually funds councils to collect organic waste and compost it. We have so many councils who want to do it, and it is very important to stop the methane from being released, because it's a very potent greenhouse gas. My last one is to do with the rating system, and I ask you to spend some time thinking about why you impose rates on buildings, because that's what you do when you put capital value. The part of your rates which is on capital value is discouraging building. And honestly, I can't see any logic in that. I would urge you to put more on the land value itself. I realise some of it is fixed interest, fixed costs, and some of that can be regressive and so on. You want to control that. But there's no reason to put it on buildings at all. And this, historically, it's happened in councils over many decades, the last 3 or 4 decades, that they've gone to capital rating. Now, the value of a land depends on the locality of the land, the location. Is it near a transport hub? Is it near amenities? Is it near natural amenities? And the value of the land is the thing to look on, because the land is different from the buildings. It's there when we're dead. So it also encourages it discourages sprawl, and it's socially just. Whenever there's been a vote in council, and once upon a time we used to have votes in council on land value taxes or capital value, and the public would always vote about 70 to 30 in favour of land value taxes. It's more sociably equitable. It's fairer. The people that are living away from the amenities aren't so close. So that's my thing. I'd like you to spend some time on rating.
Questions?
That's all.
Councillor Ravanov.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Deirdre, for coming along and speaking today. Some very interesting thoughts you've got here. And I just wanted to bring up follow up on one point you've made, and that's about organic waste collection. So you're probably aware that the recycling and the green waste collection site at Waikanae is potentially closing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think this fits in with what?
Well, it doesn't. I don't know. It's a bit crazy, really. Because it's very much used, the one at Waikanae, isn't it? Has been. But I mean, it's the vegetable peelings and all the household waste that I hate seeing. I don't, there's the green waste when we've got a lot of it locally, of hedge clippings and so on. But there's also the
So do you think more
waste
could be done in terms of individual households actually composting? Like obviously the council at present has got a incentive to.
Yeah, I know. It's had it for years and years.
Well, no, just now it's actually got an incentive to be able to get hold of it or to buy a.
Yep.
And those sorts of things must be of benefit.
Oh, of course, yes. But you can go on doing that for years, but until you actually collect the waste from, there are apartment buildings and there's businesses and there's huge amounts to deal with, and we've got a very good waste management officer now. I mean, I suggest you actually reread the report that we did.
Councillor Coates.
DG, good to see you again. Just wanted to clarify, in your submission you had ticked no to the CCO, and speaking you had said that you were wary about them.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to clarify, the consultation document itself has specific wording around that we would undertake specific consultation with the community. It then goes on to say that if pending any decision, there would be subject to further consultation. So with those provisos, what are your thoughts around?
Oh, you can explore it. That's fine. Okay. Yeah, I'm all in favour of exploring in council. But I'm just currently wary.
Sure. Okay.
I'm just an ordinary person who listens to the news.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Holbrook.
Hi, Deirdre. Thank you so much. It's interesting that you should argue for land value as being a more equitable way of rates distribution, because, I live in the Paikakariki community where we fought so hard against land value because people were capitalising on their properties and land value was going up in a way that people couldn't control. So you mentioned people living further away from amenities. I'm just not hearing another justification as to, in terms of an affordability lens, why land value would be better than capital value. I've got another.
Well, it stops the urban sprawl, because if a person is wanting to move and they've got an alternative to build up, then if you've got capital rating, your rates go up.
But isn't that fair?
Why should they? You're only using the same amount of land. Building, why are you taxing building? What is the point of taxing something that we all want?
Because somebody with I won't into a debate, don't you think it's important that those that can afford to pay higher rates?
Oh, that's an argument. Yeah, that was argued by over the years, and largely by council officers too, who the reason they can afford it is that they're wealthier, and they're wealthier because they get more capital gains when they sell and move on to the next house. You know, your land value is the stuff that goes up for capital gains.
I guess that's an element of it. It's an interesting conversation. Thank you for bringing it to the table.
Councillor Hanford.
Kia ora, Deirdre. I've just got a question around something in your submission that states that council should take a lead in reducing red meat consumption and dairy. And I'm interested to know
Or did I say that? Yeah, I do, because I mean, really, half our missions in New Zealand are agricultural, and you know, I run a Facebook group called Climate Friendly Eating. Now, it's probably the last thing that the council has thought of, but I mean, for instance, at afternoon tea times, Jackie kindly brought me a cup of tea, and I said, "Have you got any plant milk?" No. You know, where's your plant milk? You know, simple things like that. Less meat, you know, more fruit and vegetables, grains and rice and so on in your meals. So, you know, that's something the council could do, you know, for the public. Set an example.
Right. Thank you, Deirdre, for your submission and coming to speak to it.
Thank you.
The next submitter is Sue Lusk. Welcome. Yes, you.
Hello, everyone. My submission is so narrow. It's and so simple. It's just please don't forget history when we're looking at the redesign of Waikanae Library. Thank you immensely from all of us for according the same priority to the Waikanae Library that the community wants. Young and old, socially isolated, digitally excluded. There's a gentleman called Simon Lang who's just been taken on at your Paraparamu Library, who's looking at people who cannot access the library, who are digitally excluded. Citizens Advice is doing that as well. And Waikanae residents can't, a lot of them get down to Paraparamu Library. There's a lot of really good reasons to rebuild our library. We're asking that it happens as quickly as possible so that the huge cost overruns as things take too long and get too complicated, we're afraid that might make it impossible to do in the end. I acknowledge I was more in favour of refurbishment, partly because Michael Scott came up with a beautiful design in 2015 for a gallery library. Would have been a real statement for Waikanae and wonderful for the library and the gallery, I think. But it was double what the money was that had been set aside. And so for me, we just don't want this to happen again. And for all of us, the old site still makes more sense than looking at new sites. You own the site. You won't have to spend possibly 10, 15, 20% of the budget buying a site and reducing the amount of money that you can spend creating something special. The time it'll take, it'll double, if not more, with all the investigating and costing of two locations, negotiations, buying another site, presumably getting rid of the old site. Building materials alone just seem to go up and up and up, way more than inflation. The operating costs for even the little pop-up library are apparently more than the old library used to be, with the rent and the storage of books. That's going to continue the longer it takes to get the old library back again. And the landscaping is beautiful. We had the lady, I think her name was Sarah or Sophie, talking about what council doesn't do. But you did the most beautiful landscaping and you worked with the community, and we're so appreciative of it. It's got a library plaza. It was designed for an entrance to a splendid library. There's no cost extra cost for the landscaping if we go with the original site. Then there's the entrance to Waikanae Town Centre from the car park and Countdown, which at the moment is a completely blank wall and a toilet block. Athfield's design for Mahara Gallery is going to be something special. There's a real opportunity to do something special as an entrance to Waikanae Town Centre and the really attractive landscaping that we've got there now. Foot traffic. Those of you who live in Waikanae and visit the town centre know how catastrophic the loss of the library was for our businesses. Some closed, some have relocated because the foot traffic reduced so much. If we end up with a skeleton at one end of Mahara Place and a demolition site at the other, I really fear for a lot of our businesses. So, just concluding, we know the proposals for 2 sites, and we firmly believe that the existing site is the best location and can be reimagined like Foxton. I dug out a photograph. It was quite hard to find a photograph of the old Mitre 10 building. But you can see, have you actually got the Mitre 10 building and the Foxton Community Centre photograph in your papers? It's so dramatic, the difference. And Living's the same. That was a Countdown supermarket, and it's a beautiful, beautiful building now. We can do this without spending the earth. What I'm really asking for more than anything is, will councillors undertake to go back to the option refurbishing the old building if costings for this purpose-built building escalate and finally aren't agreed to in the confirmed long-term plan? If that's how it works, I'm a bit vague. You have to forgive me. There was this brilliant proposal in 2015 has made us very passionate that if the purpose-built building can't go ahead, please make sure that we can still refurbish the original building and not let history repeat itself and nothing happen. Because in 2015 it was voted down and nothing happened. Waikanae needs its community hub back as quickly as possible. And that's it. That's my very simple message. Please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Holbrook.
Thank you so much, Sue. Just a couple of things. First of all, the 2015 proposal never came to a council vote because there was a problem with the offerback on the land. So just wanted to clarify that straight away, and it wasn't a cost issue at all either. So yeah, it was just a process problem that got in the way with that one. So, which was a shame.
Yeah.
But we are where we are now, and we've, as you say, we've got this lovely, exciting gallery about to happen and the opportunity. My question is, apologies if I missed it because you submitted as an individual, but you referred to we. We would like this, and we. So when you say we, who are you speaking on behalf of?
We Jane and Lorraine and other people and myself got a petition together before Christmas.
Oh, the petition.
So we're representing probably a couple of thousand people who are very passionate, and all the big groups in Waikanae that they need to see something happen as soon as possible.
Mm. Thank you for that. And were you involved in the working group that involved the community board and some other community members as well around options?
Yes, I was, and it was an interesting experience because Graham Joyce and I were carried along by the process, and you get carried along by the professionalism and we came away from it thinking, what just happened? This makes no sense. This proposal for possibly a building in another part of the square, when there isn't money, there's so little money available for everything, when the bones of the old building are still very good bones, when Foxton and Levin have produced the most extraordinary buildings out of, a Mitre 10 and a Countdown. we just it just didn't make sense in the end, and we couldn't see the advantage in moving from the old site to a different site. So it was an interesting process, the workshop, and we were carried along by it. And it was afterwards you just thought, what happened?
It's good to get that feedback. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sue.
it was. We emailed all the members and Fraser and explained how we felt, and probably upset one or two people, but. Having seen a really wonderful 2015 design, for whatever reason, not come to fruition, and nothing else happened, it just sort of stopped. There wasn't another option. We just don't want that to happen again.
Yeah.
Councillor
Thank you
Pavano.
for coming along.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lovely to see you again, Sue. Thank you for your submission as well. So, just following up on Councillor Halborough's question. So the petition that was actually run was specifically around refurbishing the old Waikanae library. Is that correct? And how many people? Can you remember how many people signed it?
We had over 1,100 in a month, and we didn't keep it up after that because it was a lot of work, and we wanted to get the petition to you before Christmas. But all the big community groups that Jane and Lorraine went to, the big probuses, the garden groups, they're all big groups. They were all passionate that the life had been sucked out of Waikanae by not having the library anymore. And you only have to see it round the corner where the businesses are towards the main road. It's such a struggle. And Sunday Canteen has moved to Raumati Beach, I think. And a very innovative little Dutch bakery moved down to Paraparaumu Beach as well. It's really hard work. The foot traffic dropped by 50% when the library closed. So there's a really strong feeling that everyone wants it to happen quickly.
So going forward, do you know if the working group for the library is going to continue?
I haven't heard any more now, and I don't know how the consultation process will work for the two sites. No, I haven't heard from anybody whether that's something that the working group gets involved in again.
Thank you.
Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Sue, how are you? Thank you for coming in. Look, just a question. You seem to be, I'm hearing quite a lot of focus on the reinstatement of the library as such, but your reference to these other community hubs, I'm assuming, and I'd like to carry on, that you prefer to see that as a community hub. In other words, lots of other things in there as well, similar to those other places that you've mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, you've voted so far for a rebuild. So I'd love to see, now you voted for it, a rebuild on that site within that 13 million, with all the things that libraries are starting to have, the little hot desks for businesses. The library here has a really impressive upstairs computer suite for training people. Because of digital exclusion, we've lost the half a dozen computers that we had in Waikanae that a lot of people used because they couldn't afford the internet. Levin has a sort of timeout area for youngsters after school, and a soundproofed room for drums as well. And so there's the core function of the library, and Johnsonville's basically mostly books, but it's got those hot desks, and it's got the courses, and for us, getting the library rebuilt as a community hub would give the community groups somewhere to go. At the moment, there's nowhere to go. I got talked into being chair of the Cameo Pop-In Centre, and I'm endeavouring to improve that space so that maybe it can provide interim space and maybe even a little pop-up Citizens Advice and Information Centre, but all those things should be in a revitalised library as soon as possible.
Lovely, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sue, for your submission, and thank you for fronting up to speak to it.
Thank you all very much.
The next submitter is Murray Smith of Templeton Kāpiti Limited. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the chance to talk to our submission. Murray Smith, Templeton Group. Chris Simpson, probably many of you now know as well, Templeton Group. I was just take the opportunity to read our brief summary and any questions that may follow that. So a little bit about me. My past roles include being head of property at New Zealand Superannuation Fund, senior management roles within Kāinga Ora, and I also established and managed the joint venture that developed the base in Hamilton with Tainui Group Holdings. So I've quite a few years in property background. So the land of which Kāpiti Coast Airport is located is a valuable resource for the Kāpiti community and for local hapu. Development of that land is constrained by inadequate transport connections. For over 20 years, the KCDC District Plan has included a notional road linking the Kāpiti Coast Airport land underneath the Mackay's Expressway to Ihakara Street. That connection is essential to realise the economic and community potential of the Kāpiti Coast Airport land, but this notional road has never been designated and has never been included in the KCDC long-term plan. Achievement of this essential roading link depends upon KCDC acquiring 2 small parcels of privately owned land, which would also enable connection to the proposed east-west link, which is included in the long-term plan. KCDC must make provision for this essential roading link in its long-term plan. And lastly, I would draw your attention to page 2 of the drawings, page 4 of our submission, which does include a side view of the Expressway Bridge that does include the future road corridor to go underneath it. So that's the little connection we're actually referring to here. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Compton.
Thank you for coming in today, Murray and Chris. Just in terms of that road extension, I guess one of the feedbacks I often see on our community pages and that is the level of traffic we have on Raumati Road and Kāpiti Road. So would you see something like that extension running through regardless of how the airport band is developed, whether it's an airport, whether it's something else in the future? Would you see that road as taking pressure off those 2 sort of main east-west arterial roads?
Absolutely, and that's the key purpose for which it was proposed, the notional road, to spread the traffic around those other key arterial routes.
Perfect. And just a second question, if I may. There's obviously, this morning we heard from Marco Zeman from Whalesong and the Wharemaku Central sort of Park concept. Would you see that sort of tying in with this, given that it runs along the same stream corridor as well?
Do we make any comments on that, Chris?
Yes.
Perfect. Simple answer. Thank you.
Any other questions? Doesn't seem to be. Thank you, Murray, for your submission and coming to speak to us on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next submitter is Craig Steed, Parapam College Principal. Welcome.
Whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā tara ki tai. E hi aki ana te atakura, he teo, he huka, he hauhu, ti he Māori ora. Kia ora everybody, welcome for the thank you for the opportunity to speak to our submission. And welcome to each of you. So our current situation, we have a school of 1,400 students, and our college just has the one entry and exit onto Mazengarb Avenue, which if you've ever travelled past our school, particularly around 3:15, you'll know the congestion and the safety issues that occur there. So we do have issues around accidents that have occurred between pedestrians and cars, cars and cars, and bikes and cars, and we have significant projections from the Ministry around our growth. 1,800 students projected by 2032 and 2,500 by 2050. So that congestion is only going to get worse. There's particular pinch points for students moving north if they're going towards Waikanae, particularly on bicycles, because the only way they can get across to access the gravel path and then through across the bridge at Otahanga is that one little narrow footpath across the bridge, which is close and adjacent to the roundabout. So our issues there is around safe access for students as they leave the college. One of our solutions is around the movement of the bike stands, which are currently adjacent to Mazengarb Avenue, to be moved over, which I understand is council land, over by our netball courts, but particularly thinking about a solution around moving students away from the road and allowing an access towards Otahanga across two options. One being a pathway that runs adjacent to the stream and then over the bridge, or a preferred option, to be honest, is a bridge that would go across the stream towards the gravel path and then enabling safe access off north without any exits onto Mazengarb Avenue. Or Mazengarb Road. So the benefits, of course, is we are in a very fortunate situation where we do have a large number of students using bicycles, and we've got a great network here in Kāpiti, and it certainly aligns with the goals of the council in terms of the annual plan, and encouraging great healthy choices for our young people, because we all love to see them out on their bikes, doing the right thing on their bikes, but good health benefits for the community as well. But primarily it's around safety out onto Mazengarb Road, and particularly that pinch point across the bridge currently, which is we identify as a significant hazard. Thank you.
Councillor Randall.
Thank you, Craig. We had a suggestion from one of our community board members who was a former student of yours, Grace Lindsay, and she suggested she would like to see a crossing where you've got one now and further east. So, and this morning it was hectic there. I mean, with the rain. But it's also dangerous. There's a lot of kids trying to cross right over there, and other cars can't see them. Cars coming east can't see them.
Yeah, look, there's significant risks and health and safety risks across that whole section. What Grace is proposing doesn't really go anyway to solving the issue that we have, which is the students that are moving really from Waikanae, because they come cycling over the Otahanga Bridge, and then through the little networks through Kotuku and down the drive into school, and then all come in through that way. So when they exit at the end of the day, they all go out that way across the bridge, and you can see them sometimes jumping onto the road towards oncoming traffic as they try to avoid pedestrians. And while we can control some aspects of it on the school, once they're outside of that space, there's just Grace's solution could work towards the other end, but it does nothing to solve the thing that we're submitting on.
Okay. Right, thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you.
No, because there are people watching.
Okay, right, we're away. Thank you for coming, Craig. So I'm just aware of the fact that all our schools have a traffic safety plan, of which you'll be working with the council roading team on an ongoing basis, and they do upgrade that. So out of that, I would have thought that your submission would be a natural outcome out of that process operationally, and that it would have already been implemented. Have you had any comments from the road safety team on this plan?
Well, we've certainly had discussions.
Walkway?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been involved in those discussions together around options and safety around the school. So, yeah, so you're best placed really in terms of their current thinking around it. But it's not. We've discussed options around this, and this being one of them. So, yeah.
So they're up to date. All your vehicle movement counts are up to date in that site, and staff are counting also the amount of people who are using cycles and walking, and they've got all that data.
Oh, I don't know how up to date that data is, but anecdotally we know we've got over 200 bike racks, and so you've got movement of they're full and overflowing. So we would estimate 200 to 300 students using bicycles, but if you wanted absolute data on any one day, I haven't got that at hand. Yeah.
Okay, and Craig, you did say that they leave the college and then they go out of the area of your responsibility. So what exactly is the area of responsibility for college?
We feel, when I talk about responsibility, we feel responsible as students leave our school until they get home. So I'm not taking away our responsibility around students, but in terms of what we can physically do in terms of our space, we share some space between council and the school. Yeah. So you'll know in front of the school that's actually not school property where the parking is, and similarly as it goes around the gymnasium by the community gym. That is some of that is council-owned property. So hence we couldn't move the bike stands, which are partly on school and partly on council land, onto council property. You just can't do that, right? As much as we'd like to just simply move it, because that would actually help a lot. Yeah. So hence we're coming to you around that.
Okay, yeah. Look, thank you. As previous chair of Road Safety Advisory Group, I know that there's a really good process here that we have in here that we should be fixing this. So
well, that would be wonderful. Yeah, we are deeply concerned around that flow of students out onto Mazengab.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Stuart, just asking, you've got the letter here that you sent to KCDC. Have you had a response back for that?
To this?
You had a letter as part of your submission. Or was that your actual submission?
I'm not sure, sorry, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Oh. I've just got here that's the submission, is it? Sorry, I thought it was a letter that was sent to KCDC. My apologies. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Ravanov.
Thank you. I thought so. Yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah, so just getting back to this here. So during the course of your conversation here, you've said that there's about 200 to 300 bikes that arrive at college every day. So I would imagine some of those, not all of those necessarily would come from Waikanae, some would come from elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely, of course, yeah. So we do have some bike racks up towards the auditorium, so I'm not particularly referencing them, so they would head that other direction along Mazengab, and then students do flow, so some students will cross over the road with their bicycles and then head off down Guildford, or continue down Mazengab beyond the roundabout. Yeah, but they typically feed out from the bikes racks across that narrow little channel, whichever way they then spread out from.
So if So I can see how having the bike rack there and having a footbridge either there or further down, using that on the eastern side of that stream would actually allow them to get in there without having to use that intersection. But would that actually solve a lot of the safety concerns for that intersection, do you think? Or do you think there's other things that need to be done there as well?
Oh, in an ideal world, we'd be able to design the school completely differently, so there was different exit points. Yeah, that's
the major one.
You want to purchase the properties next door and
allow
us some,
Yep.
Because having everything go out onto the one street is always going to be problematic unless we did staggered start and finish times and things like that. But that just prolongs the issue, to be fair, in the day.
So, has there been any? So I see you've written. There's a letter here that we have. You wrote to Stu Kilmister. Has there been any price attached to what potentially has been proposed?
Not from our end of things.
Okay. Thank you.
I think for the footpath, actually, we had some suggestions of what that might cost, but I think that's more conversation than a properly priced out thing. Yeah. Approximations of, I think, around, I'd hate to get that wrong, but I think something like...
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, hopefully somehow this problem can be resolved.
Yeah, that would be great.
Councillor Butwell.
Oh, thank you. I was interested to hear, do you think that the changes in the roundabout on Mazengab and Ratanui Road have made it easier and safer for students to perhaps follow that road around to Otohunga rather than...
Oh, they'll never take that road. It's like so much longer than... Like, seriously, it's so quick to get through the drive and then across Kotuku Park. Like, you're talking 5 minutes, right, through there.
I guess you've
only going to be the athletes that choose the alternative route.
Yeah, I'm just looking at a map here, and it looks like there could potentially be areas at the back of the school to hook up with Lee Place, but then I guess that's trekking your bike right across all your sports fields to get
that wouldn't happen.
Loop round.
No, you'd have.
So the only alternative really is to follow where the students go currently, which is on this side of the stream. Yeah,
I think it's sensible. Yeah, to us it seems like an elegant but reasonably straightforward solution. I don't know how much a bridge costs, but and the problem with the other bridge, of course, is that's just quite narrow, and you're going to have a flood of students going across that. So it presents a new problem.
Yeah, it would just be quite, I think, ideal to split students up somehow. Rather than have them all coming out of that same area. Like I look at Kāpiti College and that's got heaps of different ins and outs. And
the shared pathway on the other side of the road's great, but it's not on the school side. So it doesn't, while it presents some solutions for students' movement, it'd be wonderful if it was on our side.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy.
Oh, thank you. I'm one of those grandparents who come and pick up their grandchild in the
car. You're brave, yeah.
But I do park in Guildford Drive.
Good.
But
thanks for not coming into the school front entrance.
That's quite all right.
Despite our signs saying not to.
Yeah, there's quite a number of cars parked at Guildford Drive now, so you've got to be early to get a good park. But I just think sometimes whether I come east or west, and the other day it was when I was coming west of the roundabout, and sometimes I notice on the east side as well that some of the students, and I know some are from Paraparaumu School, but when cars were stopped, like there's heaps of cars and they're stopped, and the young people tend to, go across the road in between the stopped cars.
Yep.
And so I'm just wondering, does Bruce go to the college, and I know there's older students, so,
yeah.
To reinforce road safety?
Yeah, we're constantly reinforcing road safety messages, but because it's such a long range of exits, asking students to, because some students literally live across the road, so to think of that, they will walk up to the pedestrian crossing, which is 300-400 metres, walk across, then walk back, is just not logical. Well, it would be lovely, but
That's right. You
They
don't
don't.
go
They
backwards.
don't. They're teenagers and they see us. The car's stopped and they think I could just nip across.
Yeah. Well, you don't go backwards to go forwards, do you really?
No. No.
Right. Thank you, Greg, for your submission.
Thank you.
And thank you for fronting up to speak on it.
Pleasure. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Much appreciated.
Okay. All right. The next submitter is Paul Hughes. You ready to rumble?
Good to be back. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to my rather brief submission to your long-term plan. I'm sorry, I've been a bit busy. There's a couple of things I want to highlight to add to what I submitted to you. Starting firstly with climate change. I see plenty of provision in your long-term plan for dealing with emissions, but the thing I want to stress is more important is the adaptation, because that's what's going to actually affect our day-to-day lives. And there's a lot of guidance going to be coming out from government on this, but I don't see any mention of it in your plan. We've got sea level rise, we've got more sea storms, and this all impacts on the huge cost you're facing for seawalls. We've got more flooding, more droughts, and government's going to come out with guidance. The community's going to expect you to deliver on that, and the actual effects that are going to be occurring. So please can you insert something substantive, a thorough go at adapting to the changes that everybody has been advising you, even during my tenure on council, that these changes are going to have adverse effects on our future lives. Second one, it's Grow Pākakariki time. The council needs to step up. You've been presented since 2013 from the Pākakariki community about the need to action the surplus NZTA land at Pākakariki, and you've specifically, council and community board have supported the acquisition of reserves that are actually important for the local people, and it's time during this long-term plan for you to action that, because this is the time when NZTA is going to be disposing of the land. You have reserve funds for the purchase of such things, and I ask you to really make that a priority. The particular is the Scarp, which is something of a district icon, and is the Tilly Triangle Neighbourhood Park, which is a new space for increased community amenity, food resilience, permaculture, and climate change adaptation as well. The third point is pensioner housing. The Community Board in Paikok and the Housing Task Force, which I've led, have all asked for council to make it that the pensioner housing in Pākakariki is managed by the local community for the interests of the Pākakariki community. And council's failed to act on this over a number of years, and it's time to let go of these pensioner units and pass them over to the iwi and the Paikok Housing Trust as appropriate, so that they can be managed in the interests of local community, and empower them to actually look after their own people, because you've failed to do anything. You've had your chance. Let's have a new brush come through and let the local community have a good go at it. Just to finish, we have an issue in the Wainui catchment at the north end of the village, where your district plan has zoned for a whole lot of housing within that catchment. This was opposed at the level in the plan by the community board at the time, but that was ignored. It will cause harm to the Paikok water supply because it allows housing in our water supply catchment. It will cause harm to the Wainui stream ecology, which is of regional or national importance, and it will also harm the Pākakariki water supply resilience by adding increased demand to a system that is already stressed and causing harm to the Wainui stream where there's no minimum flow requirements for your extraction on our behalf. It also contains versatile soils, which I'm not sure you want to have housing on these days, given the new thrust from government to protect those. So that's the ones I wanted to add emphasis to from my submission. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you. Paul, thank you. You're a well-known and respected member in the Paikakariki community, and I'm interested in item 4. You suggest to pause the Paikakariki seawall refurbishment, and you can say that there are more important projects to spend $20 million on in the Paikakariki community. Would you expand or comment on that statement?
Yes. My training as a civil engineer, and I was actually the coastal engineer for Porora City Council, and I trained, if you can call it that, using the US Corps of Engineers manual for coastal work. So I'm a little cognizant, and I don't want to question the professional integrity of the council staff in these matters, and the contractors that they get in, the consultants. But as I said, with climate change, there's adaptation. I don't see any sign of managed retreat. If anything, the seawall is a managed advance. And there's also another kilometre or so of seawall at Paikok that's going to need replacing in the future. There's a huge cost. That's 40 million, you know. Are there other ways to tackle this? I was on the community board at the time, and I went along with the community feeling, which was to build back what was there, but I do feel on reflection and having heard all the arguments that there's room for a fresh look at it, and who's to know what the answers are, but it's throwing a lot of money at something which all the signs are that we're not going to be able to sustain it long term.
Holly.
Kia ora, Paul, nice to see you. I'm just referring to your submission that I think it's item 9 that says council to ensure that central government is meeting the housing needs of those that need emergency, social and affordable housing. And it's obvious from your submission that that any further building or development within our own hapu, are you aware of the need for that emergency housing just within Paikakariki right now in the present day?
Paikakariki, as with any community, has needs for emergency, social and affordable and all those things. The Housing Trust is preparing a housing needs assessment, and council is doing its own studies, and there has yet to be a discussion on that in the community to ascertain how we might meet those needs if possible. Can we sustain them into the future? And what are the options to meet those needs from existing housing stock or whatever purposes we can apply to meet those needs after a discussion. At the moment, no one really knows those answers because we haven't gone through that process.
And just one other question. Are you aware of the water supply that the Housing Trust, Paikakariki Housing Trust, has undertaken that assessment, although I believe that they're still awaiting the results of that. So are you aware of that they've undertaken that piece of research? I'm
aware they've commissioned some research on, I wasn't aware it was on water supply, it was more around water consumption, I thought.
Yes, but I think
and I wait with that with interest.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure you knew about it.
Councillor Holbrook.
Kia ora, Paul. Thank you for coming in today, and thank you for, as usual, a very thorough and well thought out submission. I'm just a bit confused about what you say about adaptation, because you're suggesting putting the one piece of adaptation, well, an important piece of adaptation infrastructure on hold, and we have also quite an extensive stormwater infrastructure program, which is carefully prioritised, bearing in mind the effects of climate change and its impact on flooding events and groundwater. I think that counts as adaptation. So do you think we need to call things adaptation? Should we be doing more infrastructure projects, or are you talking about managed retreat? Or could you just clarify that for me, please? Because I'm not seeing that we're not doing adaptation.
I've seen, for seawalls, I've seen allowing for sea level rise, but not necessarily tectonic downlift and extra storms and things. For flooding, I understand all the models for flooding are based on historical rainfall patterns and have not been reworked to account for what the future rainfall patterns will be, and that would change the extent of flooding and ponding. So there's more work can be done in a technical sense to look further into the future rather than rely on the past practices.
Thank you. That clarifies that further question, if I may. So you said that the governments will come up with some guidance around all this. I'm also aware that we've got changes happening to the delivery of our three waters. Do you think to focus more on adaptation going forwards than we are already could potentially be jumping the gun, as we've been prone to do in the past?
You've already had advice that the climate changes are going to occur that require adaptation. So putting it off any longer, that's up to you. MFE are starting to produce guidance specifically for councils, and the Three Waters folk, when they get involved, might actually come down with some national guidance that's quite specific about the principles of how to address these things, and that will result in increased costs and a change to the way we do things. And the Climate Change Commission, as I understand it, is doing not just emissions but adaptation, and they'll be coming out with further work, and hopefully there's some government funding or legislative change to support that as well.
Thanks, Paul. It's good that you've come in today to focus a bit on adaptation, because we've had quite a few strong submissions around mitigation today and what the resources we should be putting towards that. So it's good to have that balance. Thank you.
But even if we meet the Paris targets for emissions, there's still going to be all these significant rises baked in, and we're going to have to. It's not a zero thing, adaptation. It's going to be a change and happening.
Just a question, Paul, around the Grow Paikakiriki vision, and that, how does, just for the benefit of all of us, how does that fit in with the Wainui Whenua vision and that moving forward? I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that.
The community's well aware of the Grow Paikakiriki report, which was developed by the community, and they're struggling to come up with their revised vision, incorporating that and other work from the past. They support, as I understand it, the Paikakiriki scarp protection. They haven't said they want council to purchase it as a reserve. I'm being bold here. But that's what the community decided back in 2013. And they generally are in support, other than a bit of housing on the Tilly Triangle Park. And that's the only divergence from what happened in 2013. But that's still up in the air because it's flagged as potential housing, and there's yet to be a housing needs assessment and a community dialogue about how those needs will be met and whether that site of 4 is needed for housing and whether there's a conflict or not.
Councillor Holliday.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I've actually got quite a simple question. I'm just curious, the land underneath St Peter's Hall, who owns it?
The church owns it, and the Hall Trust, the Paikakiriki Community Trust, lease it for a cheap rate. It's not $1. I think it's about 30 grand a year or something. Does anyone know? Janet might know. It's not market rate. It's not $1. It's.
is the Trust's highest overhead.
Hmm.
Cool, thank you. Just want to
But that's an important community facility, and more so after all the work the Communities Trust has done on it, and the community board meet there as well, as does council on occasion for community engagement. So,
thank you.
Right. Thank you, Paul, for your submission, and thank you for fronting up to speak to it.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
The next submitter is dinner time.
Thanks for your submission. Yeah. How's your health? I'm in a band and trying to heal down.